So, ladies and gentlemen, let me have the honor to again invite the next eminent speakers for the next panel discussion. In fact, now we are starting with the segment of higher education sector. And the topic of this panel discussion is on challenges and opportunities for women leading higher education institutions in India. And in this panel, we have Dr. Madhu Chitkara. She is the Pro-Chancellor, Chitkara University, Punjab in Himachal Pradesh. Welcome, Madhu ma'am, in this panel today.
Hello, Chandan.
Hello, ma'am. Yes,
hello. So best of luck for the session.
Yeah.
Last session
happy to see your background again, so vibrant and colorful, ma'am, every time.
Thank you.
So the next speaker for the day is we have Dr. Vidya Iravelekar. Is the Principal Director, Symbiosis Society and Pro-Chancellor, Symbiosis International University, one of the very leading and top institution, which actually has a very great contribution in representing Pune as an Oxford of East. It is a great honor and privilege, Vidya ma'am, to have you in this panel today. May we please welcome you in this forum.
Thank you very much.
The next panel speaker is Ms. Maya Sahani, the chairperson of the Sahani Group. Welcome, Maya ma'am, in this panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chandan and Asma, for inviting me here today.
Yes, ma'am. The next panelist for the day is Aruna Katara. She is the president of Hope Foundation and Research Center. Welcome, Aruna ma'am, in today's panel discussion.
Thank you very much.
The next panel for the day is Ms. Silki Jain, representing Tulas Institute, located in Dehradun. She is the executive director of this institute. Welcome, Ms. Silki Jain.
Thank you, Asma. Thank you, Chandan, for inviting me in this panel. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and this the panel will be moderated by a very strong personality of the Central India, representing ISEC Group of University. She is the executive vice president of the group, Ms. Pallavi Rao Chaturvedi. May we please welcome you, Pallavi ma'am, in today's session. You're the moderator of the day. So with this, let me have the honor to introduce the moderator of the day, Ms. Dr. Pallavi Rao Chaturvedi. She is the Executive Vice President of ISEC Group of University, Governing Body Member, Rabindranath Tagore University. She is an entrepreneur who has over a decade of experience in education field. Her objective is to cultivate a spirit of skills-based learning across the country. As a governing body member of Bhopal-based Rabindranath Tagore University, she is involved in strategic planning initiatives for the functioning and growth of the university. She is also the founder director of Brainivia Preschools and Activity Club, one of the fastest growing preschools and activity club chains in India. She is also the vice president of Early Childhood Association of India. It is a privilege to have Pallavi ma'am, you over here. So without wasting much time, can we please invite you to moderate this session with the other eminent speakers of the day. Welcome. Over to you, Pallavi. Ma'am, can you please unmute? Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Chandan, for inviting me to, be on this illustrious panel as well as to moderate it. I'm really excited to be here at the ASMA Education Leadership Conclave. And it's very rare to be meeting women from the higher education space. Typically, you have a lot of conferences for school principals or school teachers, but women in higher education, it is one of a kind that we're all here, and it's very interesting. And I'm looking forward to some very engaging and interesting discussions with everybody. So I think, Mr. Chandan, you've already introduced everybody, with a few opening remarks. Let's get straight into a lot of interesting discussion because we have only about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, right? So a warm welcome to Ms. Maya Sahani, Ms. Aruna Katara, Dr. Madhu Chitkara, Ms. Silki Jain, and Dr. Vidya. So, one of the things that comes to mind is when you talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, women in education, women equality everywhere is one of the prime drivers that is considered to be important. I had the good fortune to be at the United Nations in New York last year, speaking about the Sustainable Development Goals. And, I think it's very, very interesting to see that today, even women who don't have a teaching background are choosing to take leadership roles in education organizations. And that's very, very critical because, for myself, I mean, after about, 10 years of experience in the corporate sector, one felt that, a group of 5 universities like us, which is trying to reach out to, first generation higher education learners in rural India across Madhya Pradesh, across Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Jharkhand, there was so much that, I could contribute from a leadership role, an administrative role running an organization. So today, I think the opportunity and scope is very, very vast. It is not just about, those who start as professors and lecturers rising up in organizations of education, but it's also, people from diverse sectors, even non-academic sectors coming together to become a driving force. And that is what I think is the need of the hour when you talk about, liberalizing the way in education, the way higher education can be taken forward. So of course, women in this area already have a lot of, issues to deal with. And of course, with COVID coming upon us and the pandemic, I think the challenges have been immense. And to add to the mix, we had the NEP, also National Education Policy also being announced. So there's a lot of play right now going on. And, I want to delve a little bit into all of that as much as time can permit. So, I want to start off, with Dr. Madhu Chitkara, and, we'll take the questions in cyclical order. So first of all, I think the first question, being a panel which talks about challenges and opportunities for women in higher education. Dr. Madhu, can you tell us a little bit about, what's been your personal journey at educational, in your career, leading educational institutions and, universities, and how do you see the future kind of panning out for women taking on leadership roles?
Thank you, and giving me the first opportunity to talk about it. First of all, I must appreciate ASMA that they are taking the feedback and the ideas of women leaders in higher education. And I think very few are there. And I am first must say thanks to ASMA for making us a part of it. If you see my journey as a teacher, so I started my teaching profession in long back, 44 years back. In 1976, I started my journey as a school teacher. So if you see my journey for the last 44 years, it is P2P. It is primary to PhD. So I started teaching in a primary school and then reached to the stage of guiding the PhD students. And then in coming up with our own venture, we have now 2 universities. One is in Chitkara University, Punjab. It's very near to Chandigarh, city beautiful. And one is in Chitkara University, Himachal Pradesh. And we have 2 schools, which is K-12, and it is also managed by the ladies. So I think this is, if you see my journey, and it was a great challenge from working for somebody and creating job for other and being a lady. There were so many challenges, which is the topic of today. But whenever I saw some challenge, I always say that challenge became an opportunity for me. And there were so many challenges, especially in our field where you have to deal with the regulatory bodies and you have to meet the officers, where 90%, I can say in our times, it was 99% of them were the men. And they were having that type of feeling that now the lady is coming, whether they will be able to do, whether she will be able to do it or not to do it. So I think that was a challenge always, and we all have faced also. I think the people here sitting, you all must have faced. But I think if you see the women leader in higher education institutes, it's tough as well as very easy because it comes very naturally to a lady. You were talking about sustainable goals. if you see that if being ladies and being women leaders in higher education, so you can very well talk about the sustainable goals 3, 5, 10. I think this is very come naturally to all of us. The sustainable development goal third, what is this? Good health and well-being. And we being a lady, we are always worried and conscious about the health of our health of the society and the well-being, right? So that comes naturally to us. And if you want to achieve this goal, it comes very naturally if you are a leader for that particular education institute. And then the fifth goal, gender equality. In Chatkara, I was just going through the data. 67% of the employees of Chatkara University, Chatkara School, they are ladies, they are women. So gender inequality equality is towards men, not towards women. So it comes very naturally to us. And I think it depends a lot on the circumstances and team that gets built around. So when, as far as if you see my journey, as I'm concerned, I have turned every opportunity, whatever is coming, and every challenge becomes a priority for us to see that this is an opportunity. So
Yeah.
I am from Delhi and I'm from a very small, from a middle class family. So I was not an entrepreneur, but seeing the education, it was in my blood. So I become the edupreneur. So I think this was a journey, 44 years of journey from this to that. And
Yeah.
thank you for
Thank you,
me to be the
Dr.
first
Madhu,
speaker.
for sharing. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I think you brought up a very interesting point that, while there is a lot of acceptance in teaching-based roles, there is a lot of pressure when it comes to regulatory authorities or meeting, there's the government, there's the bureaucracy, there is, of course, all the regulatory bodies. So I'll move to Dr. Vidya Yeravtekar. Maybe Dr. Vidya, if you can throw a little bit of light on how do you manage this aspect of, running your higher education group, apart from, of course, managing, the internal system of running the university.
So first of all, let me thank Rahul and Chandan for inviting me to speak at this conference. And I'm glad that they have focused on women leadership. But I hope that, someday Rahul and Chandan also have a conference on men leadership. Because I always believe that, when you segregate men and women, that's where the discrimination begins. And I think that someday, we all must,
a common platform maybe of men and women leaders.
Yeah. So, I somehow I'm not very comfortable when it comes to women this, women that, 33% reservations, and because I think it's all about the mindset. It's nothing beyond mindset. And if you look at globally, or even if you look at the Indian scenario, things have started changing. Sheryl Sandberg is one of my favorite authors, and I'm sure all of you must have read her book and must be reading about her and what she writes and so on. And she very rightly says that I hope in the future there are no women leaders, there are just leaders. And that's where the whole mindset of people will change, and things will also change in society. As for me, I've been brought up in a family where, honestly speaking, there wasn't any gender bias, because we are two sisters. My younger sister Swati looks after the skills and distance education part at Symbiosis, and I look after the conventional systems. And of course, we have schools also under the Symbiosis Society. My two good friends, Madhu and Aruna, who are here, know about Symbiosis. But, my parents have actually brought us up not really as girls or women, but they've just brought us up on a level playing field. And I think that's so important to bring in a culture at home where, honestly speaking, parents don't believe that, you're a son or a daughter, but parents just believe that they're rearing up their children to be the best, empowering them to do their best. And that's the system that we need to actually create in all our societies. And therefore, for me, looking after Symbiosis now, came in very naturally. I always say that I'm here by default. I'm a medical doctor. I did my law. I've done my PhD. So I was practicing medicine. I'm a trained obstetrician and gynecologist, and I was abroad. And after coming back, my father had just applied for Symbiosis to become a deemed to be university. And while I had joined my private practice again, what I had learned abroad was a very good health management system, which used to be there in most foreign universities. And I felt as a doctor, why can't Symbiosis have a wonderful health management system? And at the same time, my father had applied for the Symbiosis to become the deemed university. And so I started a small venture or an organization or a department, you can call it, called the Symbiosis Center for Healthcare. So while I started my practice in Pune again, I just thought that, let's do some health checkup of students, wellness activities, and so on. And so more focus on preventive healthcare. And that was my actual association with professional association with Symbiosis. And later, of course, I used to travel with my father to Delhi, and it was pretty exciting to see how he dealt with people, how he worked with people, and not just within Symbiosis, but even outside Symbiosis. And I didn't even realize when I got swept into the overall affairs of Symbiosis. And now, of course, Symbiosis is one of the largest universities in India with more than 40,000 students, and we're in 6 cities and so on. It's no looking back, but I think even at Symbiosis, there's a wonderful ecosystem. So sometimes when delegates from outside come and, they're quite surprised, and, the statement that they make is, oh, you have a great women leadership, because our vice chancellor is a woman, our dean academics is a woman, and many of our directors are also women. They do notice it, but then I always say that when you go elsewhere, don't you notice that there are more men in the boardroom than women? So, that again, it's a mindset, and I think that's something that you need to break, so it's not about really men or women. It's, I think, just creating a level playing field. Yes, as Madhu rightly said, there are challenges, but those challenges would be even to men. So, when you walk into regulatory offices, I don't think men are, treated as well as what we are. I think it's just a mindset again that someone is coming from a private university to ask for something or, get something done. So it's just the same. And therefore, it's all about, again, the way you conduct yourself. That's also very important. When you're at leadership positions, I think your own image, the way you conduct yourself, and, the self-confidence that you have, and you also kind of exhibit. I think these are very important roles that are women at various leadership positions should display. And in India, the picture is still bad. I think in Indian education system, with 950 plus universities, you have a handful of women vice chancellors. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the number wouldn't be more than 6 to 7%. If you look at even the other leadership positions, whether it's, principals and directors and even level of professors and all that, it's not more than 15 or 16%. Yeah. So somewhere there is a need to empower women, and I think picture will change in the next few years.
Thank you, Dr. Vidya, and that's very well said. A lot has to do with the upbringing, and then it is also a lot of nurture in the later years. I also have a sister. We are 2 sisters, and I have got all the support. So I was, of course, brought up with a lot of the sense of equality, and there was no discussion as such, the boy versus girl. And I'm also very fortunate. My father-in-law is the chancellor of all our 5 universities, and under his guidance, I'm kind of my husband and I kind of run the entire group. So I think a lot of family support and a lot of people go into making the person that you are. I'd like to move to Miss Maya Shani, the chairperson of the Shani Group. And has her screen frozen? Are you here, Miss Maya?
Yes, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
You can't see me?
No, I can. I just thought for a second the screen had frozen. So, Dr. Vidya brought up a point that, in our almost nearly 1,000 universities, we have a handful of women leaders today. Why is it that you think that, that we are in this situation? Is it somewhere that women themselves they kind of second guess themselves and don't want to take on positions of such high responsibility? Is it a little bit of, hesitancy? because qualification wise we have a lot of very well educated women, very capable women, but somehow I don't see that many profiles coming in for the really the higher up positions. So what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Dr. Pallavi. But, as a woman, I haven't really faced any challenges in the educational sphere because I come from a family of educationists. They've been in this field for almost 100 years, starting from pre-partition times. My father-in-law's father used to teach the British Hindi from a dictionary that he himself had written. So starting from those days right down to in 1958, when we started our Thadumal Shahani Trust, the prime objective was to promote quality education, which was started by my father-in-law, Dada K.T. Shahani. So through observation, I've seen that education is the best field to get into. My father-in-law always used to say that we should give back to society. And the best way to give back to society is through education. So this is in our DNA. And I felt that this was something that I took like a duck to water. So personally, I haven't faced any challenges in spite of being a woman. So, but as a chairperson of the Shahani Group, my greatest focus is on making our youth employable. I'll speak more about the challenges faced by our educational system, because I feel that the key to the success of any educational institute is to offer great placements. So India has the highest youth population in the world, with half of the country's 1.3 billion population being under 25 years of age. This is a boon for our country, which if tapped properly, can harvest rich dividends for India and the world. But our greatest concern, and my concern also, is the rising lack of employability in youth. Almost 85% of India's graduates are considered unemployable for white-collar jobs, according to a 2014 FICCI survey. There's some FICCI people here. And 57 companies have unfilled positions for skilled workers. From 2015 onwards, around 1 million new students have been entering colleges in India every year. By 2020 now, frustration levels have reached the roof because fresh graduates are just not getting jobs. And that's a major problem faced by our educational industry. So our Thadumal Shahani Group is working seriously in this area and is bringing industry and academia together to create skilled and employable graduates. Our group won the DNA Award and the CII Award for the best business school for industry and academia linkages. It was ranked as number 3 by Outlook magazine for providing global quality management education. So I feel that education should be intellectually stimulating and should question assumptions rather than be based on rote learning. Edward de Bono had come out with this book, How to Teach Your Child How to Think. We don't train our students how to think. The biggest flaw in our education system is that it encourages memorizing of textbooks and notes rather than understanding the subject with the individual's own thought processes. The goal and policy of the new education system should be on creating entrepreneurs, artists, scientists, thinkers, and writers to create a knowledge-based economy rather than the prevailing low-quality service provider country we are turning out to be. This is really sad. The magnitude of youth unemployment, skill mismatch, and suicides due to academic, parental, and peer pressure should be a cause for deep worry, and now COVID has compounded the situation. So classroom lectures have become so boring, which lead to a lack of student involvement. There's massive bunking going on. But if the teachers bring practical and exciting analogies to teach, the classroom becomes more interesting and lessons become easy to understand. Many successful entrepreneurs maintain their success is based on their experience and interactions and not on theoretical knowledge. This is why in the Thadumal Shahani Institutes, the faculty comes mainly from industry and they give the benefit of hands-on learning to our students. We are among the first to bring in the concept of flipped classrooms. Now they're becoming more and more common, but we were the pioneers in the flipped classroom model. And our marking system, I feel personally, needs a total overhaul. It is highly unfair that students are evaluated only on the basis of their performance for the duration of 3 hours of exam, how can you judge a student in just those 3 hours? So in our Khadumal Shani colleges, we started the experiment of not having exams for some of our media courses and graded students for classroom participation, project work, communication and leadership skills, and extracurricular performance. This way, a genuine student will always stand out. There are many choices available to students today, and it is no longer restricted to engineering, medicine, or law as it used to be in our time. We should not look down on vocational streams. Through career counseling, we inform the students of the various streams that exist and the importance each of them plays to make an economy diverse. The current college model in India was unsatisfactory due to government regulation. Pallavi, you just spoke about government regulation. So we had outdated education techniques, bureaucracy, community-based management, but the new education policy is attempting to bring in sweeping changes, which I hope can be implemented in an efficient manner. Implementation is the key. So India needs a professionally run college group that creates students who are employable as per industry needs. The Shahani Group has been building such colleges over the last 10 years and runs colleges in non-regulated areas of higher education like business, media, banking, technology, etc. We partner with global academic and industry partners for course accreditation and running online systems for assessing, educating, and placing students, executed through offline campuses. Now, of course, everything has become offline, but the future of education is going to be blended learning. We should do away with tuition classes. I strongly feel tuition is really something that we don't require because I've always been against it. And we should work towards variety in education streams. So I'm glad the new education policy is working towards a multidisciplinary approach. This is what happens abroad, and our students flock abroad mainly because they have so many more choices available to them.
Yeah.
And now the relevance of women-only colleges is also going away. It should be co-educational because that's how minds develop better. And it's only some religious compulsions that demand that girls study in all women's institutions or get no education. So I think these are a few challenges that we face in our education system, and
Absolutely,
proactive and we work towards it.
Thank you, Ms. Maya. In fact, I think we have a very, very uphill task. You know, it wasn't easy even earlier, but now everything's got compounded. You know, first we were talking about gross enrollment ratios. You know, we were hoping that by 2035, you know, we reach the 50% mark. We're currently 2019, we're at about 26%, but 2020 now with the whole pandemic, I think things are, you know, sliding downwards again. We'll really need to kind of figure out what are the best ways, but we'll get into that. I would like to go to Ms. Aruna Katara for her opening remarks, you know, as one of the prominent women leaders in the area of education. I think you're on mute, Ms. Aruna.
Thank you. Yes, I was on mute. Thank you very much for inviting me, Asma. I have a slightly different background from what Vidya had and from what Maya had. I came from a very traditional, old-fashioned Sindhi family, where the girl was not supposed to be heard, not supposed to be seen, not supposed to speak. The only aim in life was to get her married safely to a good family, whatever that means. I remember even as a growing up girl, I was interested in everything except studying. And if in studying I was interested in anything, it was in English literature, maybe some geography. I had red lines every year. I don't know how I passed my 10th standard with a 50%. What I'm trying to say is I was never a good student. And then coming from a family which did not want you to aspire into being an academic person, I did want to do an MBA at that point of time. And I remember IMDR and Symbiosis had just about started that time. And I was so keen on doing an MBA. But no, that was not to be accepted. I got married. I hope I was a good wife and a good daughter-in-law and a good mother. I really hope so. I spent the first 25 years after being married doing that. It was towards 1995, 96 when I realized my kids were older. They don't really need me. And I was just getting in their way and I was going nuts trying to be involved only with them. So I realized that I need to change tracks. And I decided at that point of time, I decided to join SIBM for DBM and MMS. And I passed out my MMS with a distinction. Now, why am I mentioning this? I'm mentioning this because this is this person who got 50% in the 10th standard, and marks meant everything in life in our society and in our community. And at that time, I had let down myself and I had let down my parents. But at the age of 40, I decided, 38, I decided I'm going to do something that I like. And I liked what I studied. That kind of gave me some kind of needling and push that I need to do more than now be a housewife. And I told my father, give me some money, give me 1 crore, give me 2 crores. And he asked me why. I said, I want to start a school. And I want to start a school where the driver's son and my son can go together. So he tells me, don't worry, I have something big in mind and you will have something to do. You will find time to do some social work and pass your time. Well, that's good. So at that point of time, I was the managing trustee of Hope Foundation and Research Center, which my father, chairman of the Finolex group, P.P. Chabria, had started. The trust is more than 40 years old. And the first engineering college in Ratnagiri was set up 25 years back. Finolex Industries had set up a plant in Ratnagiri, and they realized that there is a dire shortage of education and opportunities at that part of the country, rural India, which I choose to call Bharat. So now Bharat is not short of talent. Bharat is not short of the need and the urge and the hunger to study, but Bharat has been short of opportunities. So when my father started the college there, he thought that let me get her involved in the trust activities. The boys in the family had no time for this. They were too busy with doing the Finolex business. It's just by chance that this came to me, opportunity came to me, and I consider it my luck or my destiny to be able to grab it. So when the college started in Pune, Ratnagiri was 7-10 hours driving distance away. I could never really do justice to the role I was given. But when we started in Pune in the year 2000, the International Institute of Information Technology, I was involved from the first drawing board, Hafiz Contractor being our architect, Dr. Patkar being our chief mentor, and my father being the administrative head. I got a chance to firsthand deal with building an institution from the drawing boards, from the drawing and from the purchase department. In fact, other than teaching, which I have dabbled in a little bit, all the other administrative functions that are required to put up an institution, an education institution, I've had first-hand training. For the first 7 years, I was not paid. I was a trainee. I was a trainee because my father did not believe in nepotism and he wanted me to deserve whatever he could. He wanted me to deserve and earn my place. It was my husband who supported my car and the driver bills and the phone bills. And at the end of 7 years, Dr. Patkar told him, the chief mentor told him, I think this lady deserves now some kind of salary and an acknowledgement in terms of, yes, she is working and contributing towards the growth of the institution and the trust. I got my first salary at the age of 47. And there has been no looking back since. So I think there are 2 turning points in my life, which I promote to every girl and every boy that comes and talks to me. Number 1 is education. I know there was an era when, for example, my father was not lettered and not studied, but he could come so far. But today's day and age, with the opportunities that you have and the different domains that you can study, there is no short of options and there are no short of having access to good education. So I think the 2 things that changed me was education at the age of 37, 38, 39, and starting to really work at the age of 40 and getting my first paycheck at 47. These three things have been the influencers of my life. And I have tried to now use what I learned from and what I benefited from whoever crosses my way, whoever comes to my office. It's been a wonderful learning experience. And I won't repeat what Vidya spoke and what Maya spoke and what Madhu spoke in the area of education. India today is in an era of transition. And this year, 2020, more so. More so because everything has changed. Let me not go through what the others have said earlier. Turn back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Aruna, for sharing that, there is never something called too late. You can always pick up at any age. And now is the best time to begin. What better time than now? And, while some of us have had very traditional, you grow up knowing that you're groomed for a business, daughters of educational businesses or daughter-in-laws, who come in and take it on. But you also have you also have women who have had a very different path, right? So, there is no one rule and one strategy to getting there. And, I think finally in education, passion is what drives all of us. And I think somewhere, the bug bites you irrespective of what age. And then when it does, you are there. So let me move to Ms. Silky Jain. She's our final panelist today for her opening remarks and listening to a little bit about what she's doing.
Thank you, Pallavi. I think it's been a great pleasure to hear from all the senior leaders. I really do not know that have I achieved so much that I have to be a part of this panelist, or there is something else, because I was not expecting. I'm a alumni of Symbiosis fashion designing course, and Vidya ma'am is sitting as a panelist. I really do not have words that should I be. I'm sorry?
Two alumni of Symbiosis. One is Aruna and the second one is you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm honestly nervous. I've been a part of so many panel discussions so far. It was me who was constantly telling Asma that we should have a panel discussion with women's, because I really want to meet women of my age, and I want to discuss what is going around in the world. But they directly put me into such kind of a panel where I think I should not speak much, but I should learn a lot today. So thank you, Asma, first of all, for inviting me on such a beautiful and enriched panel. And I definitely was born in an era that is late 80s, close to 90s, where the world was becoming modern. And but still, my upbringing was not that I was supposed to be handling a college and a school. But I was also given the same kind of traditional thoughts that, yes, you should have a good education. One day you have to get married. But I don't know what happened to my father while he was into his construction business in 2006. And I was admitted in Symbiosis in the fashion communication course. Something changed in his mind. And from there, he started pushing me to do something in life. I really do not know till today what was that one thing which changed my father's approach, and that's the reason I'm sitting here today. So while I was completing my education in 2010, I still wanted to fly to London Harrods. I was given the opportunity of a job and plus PG course there, which was one of the very luckiest thing anyone would want to work in London as a first job. But my father, that time I would say it was a very unfortunate situation for me, and he just drove me into his business because he had recently it was just 4 years when he had got into the education industry, because that's what I think changed in his mind also, that I want my daughter also to be educated and also to be an entrepreneur in the coming life. And I literally had a very bad phase with my father for almost like 3 months after completing my graduation, that please let me go, please let me fly, please let me achieve my own, and I should also be called as a self-made girl like you have been called all throughout your life. But he said, no, I really want you to do something for this country, for this state. And that was an unfortunate situation for me. But today, when I look up to back 10 years now, I think that has been the most fortunate step that my father could have taken for me. Because Pallavi, I'll tell you that it's been a decade I've been a part of this industry, and I'm the biggest example today, at least from my state. There's only one women eduleader out of so many colleges which are running into this small state of Uttarakhand. And I really crave that I do not have a single women eduleader leading the higher education sector like I am doing. So definitely I would like to thanks. Yeah. So me also, like, we are one brother and one sister. And but yes, I'm blessed. My father has always given me a priority, not thinking in a way that girls should get a better thing in life, but I don't know, maybe I am the loved one. And yes, my brother also works along with the same education fraternity where I work in. But like I was sharing, when I stepped into this education sector, I had no one, honestly, to share my thoughts. I had no one to share my feelings, because I had come from a city from Pune, which was much faster in terms of thoughts, space, and the life in a day. And when I came back to Dehradun, it was literally, though I had spent my childhood here, but the kind of system which was getting followed here was totally different. So what I realized, that the system in Maharashtra, Kerala, South Tamil Nadu is very different from North India. So I literally had to face a challenge where my cultural fest were happening, that the girls were at a different side. There was a barricade for boys at a different side. The classrooms, which was a co-ed college, but yeah, the girls were sitting at a separate bench, boys had a different section. The mess hours were different, the canteen hours were different, the gym was not same. So I have so much to talk, like, though I'm coming from a modern era, but coming to Uttarakhand, it was totally different experience for me, where I actually which actually took me that I have gone maybe 50 or 100 years back.
Yeah.
So my journey, yeah. So my journey definitely is in the what do you say, 2000 years. But yeah, I have really seen the time where I had to give girls the same kind of equality that they deserve, and I'm doing the same.
Thank you. Thank you, Silky, for sharing your story and how you got into this entire space. And I think one of the points I want to pick is there are the cultures are so different in different parts of the country, and when you talk about women and male students studying together, things get very, very different. I'm from Bangalore, but now I live in Bhopal. Our universities are in Bhopal, which is Rabindranath Tagore University. We have one in Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh, which is Dr. C.V. Raman University, one in Hazaribagh, one in Vaishali, and Patna, Jharkhand. These are very, very difficult areas to work with. And with that, I want to touch upon, I think we have time for just one more round of questions, which is now with the entire online education system coming into play, and not having visibility of when, of course, the skill centers across the country have opened up, but universities are going to take time to really come back to I don't know, it'll never be the old normal, but even the new normal, it is going to take time. So I want to kind of talk about what are some of the steps all of you are taking to kind of get your students involved, stay engaged, because what happens with school education is it is far more structured. School students, the way the fees comes in, the way the exams are conducted, with the way the children sit in classes and attend it with all seriousness, is very different from the way university students, do that. And coupled with that, access to technology becomes such a challenge right now. Whether you talk about, the hinterlands, like the geographical areas in which our universities are, or I'm sure, Uttarakhand and some of the hilly areas, access to, good internet, good devices becomes so difficult. Training your own professors to get on to a complete new modus of teaching students, evaluating them, all of that is very different. and it is very difficult, but this or a blended approach is here to stay. So let's talk a little bit about that, and what are some of the ideas that you have in terms of what can be done, and how do you see it being sustainable for an interim 2 to 3 years, if that really is the way the pandemic is going to pan out. So Dr. Madhu Chitkara, back to you.
I think, thank you for this. I was waiting for this, Pallavi, this question to come. Reason being that everybody is talking about now that how the things will be new normal, and new normal will be very normal now. And it is not going to, because we have to wait another 2-3 months till the vaccine is not there in the market. So when it came in March, all of a sudden that situation came into all the educational institutes too. And I think this was a sector where I think billion of students were connected to the higher education institutes, the schools and the colleges. So immediately we were to shift from the offline mode to online mode. It was a challenge for all of us. And luckily in Chitkara University, we were very tech savvy, and I think 2014-15, we did everything online, and we were using the platforms for online mode of teaching, and it was already blended teaching. So within a weeks of orientation to our teachers, to the professors, everybody shifted to, because we got in Chandigarh, we got 1 week to prepare ourselves. So it was a holy holidays, and after those holidays we got 1 week, and we were able to sense it that in other countries it is going to have the lockdown. Maybe it happened in India also. So in 1 week we immediately settled ourselves into the online mode, and since we were having technology was the best in Chitkara, so we were not in a trouble thing. The only thing which mattered us was the evaluation of the processes, that how to evaluate their performances. So that summative and formative evaluation, both were to be taken care. And for that, we immediately asked for the platforms. We took Maya, Not Me, we took the Moodle's platforms were there. And we invested during that lockdown some good amount of money into going for those online modes. And reason being that some of our courses are all practical based. Now, for example, pharmacy, for example, optometry, the physiotherapy. So these courses are where these are the practical intensive courses. So where we thought of taking that platform where the simulations can be done, that platforms can be used. So very much in time, we were able to finish our semester. Then online virtual mode, we did that we can say that the degrees were also given to them, that the convocation was also done, and new sessions started. So it was all that we were able to invest in technology. And I think it is going to stay 3-4 months more. So we have to have the new normal where all the universities and the colleges have to invest more into technology. And one thing at the end I want to say, that out of this, all the people in the panel want to mention here that maybe it was a challenge or an opportunity for me. Me and my husband started this venture, and we are the first generation into this profession. So we have never got any opportunity to get the ideas from any of our senior members of the family, because they were not into it. So it was, in one way we can say it's a challenge, that though no mentor was there, no guru was there. It was all by observing the things from Symbiosis or Manipal or some other institutes. We learned so much from these institutes, but I think in another way, it becomes an opportunity that all the creativity, whatever we had, me and my husband, and that was used in creating the Chitkara University as a forefront of education. And the second thing which I want to mention is that I'm always very, very thankful to all the men in my life. They supported me a lot, never asked that till 12 o'clock night where you are, what you are working. And so they were having so much of confidence. First my father, then my husband, then my son. and now my grandson also, because they all are supporting me. Whenever I'm late, they always say, "How was your day, Dadi?" So I think that is
That's
a
sweet.
good feeling when you are getting the support from a man. So I'm very thankful to all the men in my life and all the people working around me, all men. But they are supporting me that whenever I have to achieve something. So I think Women's Day are always to be celebrated with giving the thanks to men.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing, Dr. Madhu. And yes, it's very it's very foolish for any of us to say that we do everything on our own. If I'm sitting here today, it's my children who are 3 and 8 years old who are also cooperating with the time which I could have spent with them, but away from work. So I've got this message from Chandan that I can give everybody just a minute now to speak. So I'll move to Dr. Vidya. When it comes to teaching effectiveness on the online mode, students are not used to it, faculty members are not used to it, and there are aspects of teaching learning which are not the best implemented through technology and kind of separated by the screen. What are your thoughts on effectiveness of teaching learning?
So I think I would like to echo the same feelings as what Madhu has said, that there needed to be a lot of capacity building, though we were our teachers were used to teaching online, I mean to some extent, but not as much as what they need to do today. And I think we had to upgrade our IT resources, and we had to do a lot of faculty training as well from some of the faculty members who were already well trained in delivering online education. So and they faculty suddenly became very innovative. I mean, they themselves got trained, they were provided training by the university, and they were very, very innovative in the delivery of whatever they had to deliver to students. Because see, as you very rightly said, in school education, though of course nowadays parents are pretty conscious of what and how their children learn and the screen time and all this online education, but more importantly, it's very difficult to keep the higher education students engaged and well engaged. So it's not easy. So I must applaud all the faculty members at Symbiosis for having done a wonderful job. And I'm sure, as someone said, that this new normal is going to be normal now, and we might move from online education to a fairly good amount of blended education. And I think that has really helped us. The other good part of, I think, online education, I know we're running short of time, but I would also like to say is internationalization. I mean, that topic is very close to my heart. So I'm bringing this in this discussion, that never ever before so many foreign faculty would teach at Symbiosis, and I'm sure at other universities that are represented here, as what they would do, when it was face-to-face teaching. I mean, how many foreign faculty would really travel all the way to our university and teach? But here you have, you can engage with them online. There is this collaborative online international learning that's happening, a lot of co-teaching with foreign faculty that's happening, co-learning with students from other universities, sitting in the same virtual classroom. So I think Corona has not, of course, I mean, you can look at the negative aspect of it, but I think a lot of positive things have happened. And if they continue, I'm sure, all of us will do pretty well than ever before.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vidya. Indeed, the world has shrunk. We have the best resources, in terms of people, whether it's platforms, all of it. In fact, I think, in a normal year, in the normal course of, our lifetimes, it would have taken us a decade to make people understand the meaning of technology and trying to upgrade. But what the last 1 year has done has been, a huge catalyst for change. And, there are a lot of positives coming out of it. Ms. Maya, over to you for a minute.
Yes, Dr. Pallavi, I would agree with you that Corona has been the greatest catalyst for this change. People were stunned into action. They thought they would never get into the online mode so soon. But I must share with you that since I had two educational bodies as a woman leader in education, one is our own Shahani group, where this kind of technology had come in much before Corona, because my son Akhil Shahani, who's an ex-graduate of the Kellogg Management School, and he's done his PhD in education employability, he could foresee this coming, and he said EdTech is going to be the education of the future. So just a few years before the pandemic started, we were already an EdTech company and training people online as well as offline as a blended form of learning. So for us in the Shahani group, the transition was very easy, and it's really helped our business also, because we can reach out to more and more people. And through this online training, We are helping the under-resourced students also, because we've received a very big grant of 2.5 million from JP Morgan, $2.5 million, and they're going to increase it to double the amount just to train students in the banking and finance sector. So I can work very happily with Aruna because she's running a foundation and she's helping the rich and the poor students are studying together. We also believe in equity in education. So the online mode it's breaking barriers, and we can reach out not only here nationally, but internationally also. And the other thing is that I'm heading the Hyderabad Sindh National Collegiate Board as a trustee. We have 27 educational institutes and we have 50,000 students enrolling every year. So for us, it seemed to be a mammoth task to convert from online to offline, but then our provost, Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, he's been like a ringleader and he's whipping us all the time to hurry up, hurry up. So overnight we could do this, perform miracles like all the others.
Thank you.
Since we have limited time, this is all I can say.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Ms. Aruna, over to you. You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Completely agree with Madhu, with Vidya, and with Maya. So we saw the trend in the beginning of the year, 2020 started, as to what is happening around the world, and it's coming closer home. It was Jan, Feb, March, and we realized that this is coming closer home. And we were very proactive. I give kudos to my team. Within a week, we met the ground running, and technology, we used it to the best of our ability. There were many of us who were not trained, but then there were many who were trained, who had international experience, and us being in IT and computer sciences predominantly programs, I'm very proud to say that we were very agile, and we realized that the game today is to be agile, to be flexible. And we also realized that there are so many more options available now today. There was Coursera, there's NPTEL. So my faculty and my students have taken fullest advantage of what is available online. And I'm proud to say that we've met this challenge. And I'm agreeing with everyone to say that it's the time of blended learning now, and this is going to be the new normal.
Yes.
What tomorrow holds, we don't know. But the important part is to be agile, to be flexible, and to be very proactive and to move.
Yeah.
And that is what the generation today wants. They do not anyways understand elephant steps. So I'm proud of my team where this is concerned. I'd like to just quickly end with to all the leaders over here on the screen and who've been here participating today. I want to congratulate all of you and to thank you for your services to the youth of our country, because I believe the role that we are playing is of nation building. They sound like lofty words, but that is the truth. And I'm really, really privileged to be here today amongst all these ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aruna. And finally, Ms. Silky, your closing, words on this for a minute.
Yes, thank you, Pallavi. I think we Tulas Institute from Dehradun are really thankful to all our faculties and students for getting ready so fast, because this was not expected. But yes, our faculties did a very good job, and I would be very happy to tell you that apart from the solutions which were available in the market, which are very handy, we as a team prefer to create our own app and the technology, because we realized that our students are from different parts of the country and everyone is dealing with a different set of problem. So in terms of they do not have laptops, or they do not have the right electricity. There are a lot of minute things which became very big at this time of pandemic. And yes, I would like to congratulate the team that that education can be done remotely. I think this is the biggest thing what we have learned, which was so far away, but because of this pandemic, we have learned this. And yes, our skills are for not just as a degree, they are for future, which is again a learning which we have got. And yes, I think this pandemic, everyone is taking it as a negative thing, which was definitely initially, but now is turned to be a boon for our country, because digitization, which is a very big term, people never used to understand what it is. Now it is very easy, handy in all 8 sectors, understand it very, very well. Be it my grandfather of 80 years old or now a generation. I think this pandemic has made all of us come closer to each other. And yes, I think thank you so much for this wonderful evening today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think, Mr. Chandan is really here to chase us all away. We've run out of time now, but it's been such a pleasure to speak to all of you. And, I think I want to echo the thought that Ms. Aruna left us with, that, all of us here and all our teams have put in disproportionate effort to rise to the situation at hand. And, our students are really lucky to be studying at institutions and universities where there has been forethought, there's been vision, and where the managements of institutions, a large part of Indian institutions, are taking those proactive steps to keep students pacified and not get them stressed about what kind of loss they will have in terms of time and their career. So thanks so much. I've had a wonderful time, and it will be lovely to know all of you one-on-one. It was a very rushed discussion. The topics for higher education, women leadership at large are so deep and so many that just 2 rounds of conversation is really scraping the tip of the iceberg. But that's what it is right now. So thanks again, everyone, and Chandan, over to you again.
Thank you, Pallavi. You are a great moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr.
thank you to all the panelists.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Madhu ma'am. That was my line. Lovely moderation.
Chandan, you are the great best.
You have the last word, don't worry.
Yes, sir. I understand, ma'am. Everybody, you had a so busy schedule in your own organizations, own lives, your family, your profession, but still you try to manage, and you thought that this panel should be addressed. So my deep regards to that, ma'am. Thank you so much, everybody. Such a senior and learned panelist over here, from such a young leader like Silke Jain to ma'am like Maya Sahani ji and Aruna ma'am. Ma'am, I could not resist, Maya ma'am. You're looking so cute and so beautiful today. And Madhu ma'am ki to tareef karte rehta hu. I'm so impressed with the background images of you, Madhu ma'am. Every event is having a separate background. Even I would like to say to Rajita ma'am also, aaj to different background dikh raha hai Rajita ma'am ka bhi. So thank you so much, Aruna ma'am. I was so happy to see the kind of energy you feel, and you're so humble, so sweet, and so clear in your thoughts and your vision which you want to lay to this energetic panel, starting from your old age days and how you have passed your journey and how you are coping up with the current digital age. It's hats off to you. So keeping yourself so fit, so beautiful, so energized, balancing your your professional life, your personal life, your kids, your love, your family is salute, ma'am. Dono haath se salute banta hai to everybody and every one of you here, ma'am. And we are so honored, so happy. मतलब सुबह 1 बजे से सेशन शुरू हुआ था और अभी शाम के 6 बज रहे हैं. I'm still feeling so fresh and energized by having you people. थोड़ी देर के बाद I will be inviting everybody again, ma'am, because there is an award ceremony for which everybody is still waiting for it. I will be having our guest of honor for the day, Anju Sharma ji, again at 6:30 to have the honors. So thank you so much, the panelists today. Let
So
me
we have to come
go
back
ahead with
at 6:30?
yeah, ma'am. At that time, maybe 10-15 minutes late because of this session got late by another 15 minutes. So with that adjustment. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Vidya ma'am, Aruna ma'am, Madhu ma'am, Pallavi ji, Silke ji, and Maya ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.